Tonight we move slowly downward into the deepest known part of the ocean. Our subject is the Mariana Trench, a vast geological feature that lies beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. It is not a single hole in the seafloor. It is a long, curved trench stretching for more than 2,500 kilometers. Its shape follows the boundary between tectonic plates. Its deepest point is known as the Challenger Deep. The trench rests east of the Mariana Islands, near Guam and north of the Philippines. From the surface of the water to its deepest measured point, the distance is close to 11 kilometers. If Mount Everest were placed inside it, the summit would still remain more than a kilometer below sea level. The numbers are large, but in the quiet of thought, they begin to feel steady and measurable. The Mariana Trench formed through a process called subduction. The Pacific Plate moves slowly westward. It slides beneath the smaller Mariana Plate. This motion is gradual. It occurs over millions of years. As one plate sinks beneath the other, the crust bends downward. Over long spans of geological time, this bending deepens and sharpens. The trench is the visible expression of that slow movement. The ocean above the trench appears calm from space. Waves move across it as they do anywhere else. Ships pass over it without sensing what lies below. The great depth remains hidden beneath several layers of water, each with its own temperature, density, and circulation pattern. The first scientific awareness of the trench came in the 19th century. In 1872, a British research vessel called HMS Challenger set out on a global oceanographic expedition. During its journey, crew members lowered weighted lines into the Pacific. They measured depth by hand, allowing rope to unwind until it reached the sea floor. In 1875, they recorded a sounding of about 8,184 meters in the region that would later be identified as the deepest part of the trench. The measurement was not exact by modern standards, yet it revealed that the ocean floor descended much farther than previously imagined. Over the following decades, improvements in sonar allowed more accurate mapping. Echo sounding replaced weighted rope. A pulse of sound traveled downward, reflected from the seabed, and returned to the ship. The time delay revealed the depth. In the mid-20th century, systematic surveys confirmed that the deepest location in the trench exceeded 10,000 meters. Depth in the trench is not uniform. Its slopes are steep in places, with terraces and ridges formed by shifting plates. Sediment slides downward along these slopes. Fine particles settle slowly from the upper ocean. Over time, the floor becomes layered with soft deposits shaped by gravity and pressure. Pressure at the bottom is immense. For every 10 meters of depth, pressure increases by roughly 1 atmosphere. At nearly 11,000 meters, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. That is more than 1,000 times the pressure at sea level. Any object descending into this environment must withstand forces that press inward from every direction. Temperature in the deepest water is low. It hovers just above freezing, usually between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius. Sunlight does not reach these depths. Even at 1,000 meters, light is faint. By several thousand meters, it disappears entirely. The trench exists in perpetual darkness. For much of history, scientists assumed that life might not survive under such pressure and cold. Early theories proposed that beyond a certain depth, the ocean would be lifeless. Yet samples brought up from deep waters contradicted this idea. Small organisms appeared in dredged sediment. Microscopic shells were found in mud collected from the abyssal plains. The first direct descent to the deepest part of the trench took place in 1960. A bathyscaphe named Trieste carried 2 men downward. One was Jacques Picard, the other was Don Walsh. Their vessel was Waiwai, designed with a thick steel sphere to resist pressure. Gasoline filled large float tanks above the sphere. Gasoline is lighter than water and remains relatively incompressible, making it suitable for buoyancy at great depth. The descent took nearly 5 hours. The craft moved slowly downward through layers of water. Light faded gradually. Outside the small window, the water shifted from blue to dark gray, then to black. Bioluminescent organisms flickered in the darkness, creating brief points of light. When the bathyscaphe reached the sea floor at Challenger Deep, it settled gently into soft sediment. A cloud of fine particles rose around it. The pressure outside was extreme, yet inside the sphere conditions remained stable. Picard and Walsh observed the bottom through their small viewport. They reported a flat landscape of light-colored mud. They noted what appeared to be a small, flat fish, though later interpretations suggest it may have been a sea cucumber or another invertebrate. Their stay at the bottom lasted about 20 minutes. Communication with the surface ship was limited. After releasing ballast, the bathyscaphe rose slowly. The ascent required several hours. The mission demonstrated that humans could reach the deepest known point in the ocean and return safely. For decades after that descent, no one returned in person to the deepest part of the trench. Robotic vehicles, however, began to explore more regularly. Advances in materials science allowed the construction of remotely operated vehicles, known as ROVs. These machines were tethered to ships by cables that transmitted power and data. They carried cameras and sampling devices. They could remain underwater for long periods. In 2012, another human descent took place. The filmmaker and explorer James Cameron piloted a specially designed submersible to Challenger Deep. He descended alone. The craft was narrow and vertical in shape, built to minimize exposure to pressure. Cameron reached the seafloor after several hours. He collected samples of sediment and organisms. He also captured high-resolution images of the terrain. These expeditions provided direct observation, yet much of what is known about the trench comes from robotic surveys and deep-sea sampling. The biological life found there is adapted to darkness, cold, and pressure. Many organisms are small. Amphipods, which resemble tiny shrimp, move across the sediment. Sea cucumbers graze on organic material that settles from above. Microbes thrive within the mud itself. At such depth, food is scarce. There is no sunlight to support photosynthesis. Most energy arrives indirectly. Organic particles drift down from the upper ocean. Dead plankton, fragments of algae, and waste from larger animals sink slowly. This steady rain of material is sometimes called marine snow. Over time, it accumulates on the trench floor. Occasionally, a larger event delivers more substantial nourishment. When a whale dies and its body sinks, it can reach the abyssal depths. There, it becomes a concentrated source of nutrients. Specialized organisms gather to feed on it. Bacteria break down bone and tissue. Crustaceans and worms consume softer parts. The process can sustain a community for years. The organisms that inhabit the trench possess physiological adaptations to pressure. Their cell membranes remain flexible despite compression. Certain proteins are structured in ways that maintain function under high pressure. Many deep-sea species lack large air-filled cavities. Gas spaces would collapse under such force. Some trench organisms produce bioluminescence. Light in the deep sea serves as communication, camouflage, or predation. In darkness, even a faint glow can carry meaning. Yet at the very bottom of the trench, bioluminescence appears less common than in mid-water depths. The sediment-dwelling species rely more on touch and chemical signals. Microbial life in the trench has drawn particular interest. Samples reveal communities of bacteria and archaea capable of surviving under high pressure and low temperature. Some metabolize chemicals released from rocks. Others consume organic matter buried in sediment. Genetic studies show that these microbes possess enzymes uniquely suited to their environment. The geology of the trench is complex. Earthquakes occur along the subduction zone. The descending Pacific plate bends and fractures as it sinks. Water trapped in the plate is released into the mantle, influencing volcanic activity in the Mariana Island arc. The trench is therefore part of a larger system that connects surface processes with deep earth dynamics. Sediment in the trench records environmental history. Layers accumulate slowly. Tiny shells of plankton, known as foraminifera, settle to the bottom. Their chemical composition reflects the temperature and chemistry of the surface waters in which they lived. By analyzing these layers, scientists reconstruct past ocean conditions. Despite its isolation, the trench is not free from human influence. Studies have detected plastic fibers and chemical pollutants in sediment samples from its depths. Amphipods collected from the trench have been found to contain traces of industrial compounds. These findings demonstrate that even the deepest ocean is connected to activities at the surface. Mapping of the trench continues. Multi-beam sonar systems produce detailed topographic images. Autonomous underwater vehicles travel close to the seafloor, scanning ridges and slopes. Each survey refines our understanding of the trench's shape. Small variations in depth are measured with increasing precision. The water column above the trench is layered. Near the surface, warm water circulates with currents driven by wind and temperature differences. Deeper down, colder and denser water masses move slowly across the Pacific basin. Some of this deep water eventually flows into the trench, carrying oxygen and nutrients. Oxygen levels in the deepest parts remain sufficient to support life. This is partly due to global circulation patterns that transport oxygen-rich water from polar regions into the deep ocean. The process is slow. A parcel of deep water may take centuries to complete its journey through the global conveyor system. As research continues, scientists develop stronger materials and improved instruments. Pressure-resistant ceramics, specialized alloys, and thick acrylic viewports enable safer exploration. Each descent requires careful engineering, Every cable, seal, and joint must endure compression without failure. The Mariana Trench stands as a natural laboratory for studying extreme conditions. It offers insight into the limits of life on Earth. Organisms that survive there inform research into biotechnology and the origins of life. Some scientists consider how similar conditions might exist beneath the icy crusts of distant moons. Yet, in its essence, the trench is a quiet place. It lies far below the sea, motion of waves and the noise of ships. Sediment drifts slowly downward. Small creatures move across the soft floor. Earth's plates continue their gradual descent, millimeter by millimeter, shaping the landscape over millions of years. When we consider the Mariana Trench, we observe a meeting of geology, biology, chemistry, and human curiosity. Each expedition adds a small layer of understanding. Each sample of mud carries microscopic evidence of processes both ancient and ongoing. The darkness remains, yet it is a darkness that supports life. In the stillness of thought, the trench becomes less a distant mystery and more a measurable part of our planet. It is deep, cold, and under great pressure. It is shaped by tectonic forces. It is inhabited by organisms adapted to extremes. It has been visited by a small number of people and many machines. Above it, the ocean's surface continues its gentle motion. Below, the deepest waters rest in near silence. The Mariana Trench remains a place of depth and patience, a feature carved by time, studied with care, and understood step by step through steady observation. Over time, careful measurements refined our understanding of the trench's exact depth. Early sonar surveys produced slightly different numbers. Equipment improved, and so did calibration. In recent years, high-resolution mapping expeditions have confirmed that the deepest part of Challenger Deep reaches just under 11,000 meters, with measurements around 10,900 to 10,930 meters, depending on the survey method and tidal conditions. Small differences are expected. The seafloor is not perfectly flat. Sediment shifts, instruments vary. Mapping such depth requires patience. Multi-beam sonar systems emit many sound pulses at once. These pulses travel downward, reflect from the sea floor, and return. Computers translate the timing into topographic maps. When autonomous underwater vehicles descend closer to the bottom, they gather finer detail. Ridges, small depressions, and subtle slopes appear in the data. The trench floor is smoother than many mountainous regions on land, yet it still contains texture. The trench itself is part of a longer chain of deep ocean trenches that trace subduction zones around the Pacific Basin. This ring of subduction is sometimes called the Ring of Fire. The Mariana Trench is one of the deepest segments in that system. Along its length, depth varies. Only a few small areas approach the maximum at Challenger Deep. Within Challenger Deep, scientists recognize several basins. These are small depressions separated by gentle rises. Each basin holds slightly different sediment patterns. Gravity draws particles into the lowest points. Over centuries, layers accumulate. Fine clay minerals mix with the remains of microscopic organisms. The result is a soft, cohesive mud. Pressure at this depth shapes every physical interaction. Water becomes slightly denser under compression. Materials behave differently. Metals must be thick. Acrylic viewports must be carefully engineered. Even small flaws can expand under force. For this reason, deep submersibles are tested repeatedly before descent. The engineering culture around these missions is quiet and methodical. After the Trieste descent in 1960, technological progress slowed for a time. The cost and complexity were high. In the decades that followed, unmanned exploration became more common. Remotely operated vehicles extended human reach without exposing people to direct risk. Fiber optic cables allowed real-time video from great depths. Cameras grew smaller and more sensitive to low light. In 1995, a Japanese robotic submersible called Kaiko reached Challenger Deep. It collected sediment cores and biological samples. These cores revealed microbial life living within the upper layers of mud. Later missions by different nations added to this collection of data. Each visit contributed small pieces to a larger picture. In the early 21st century, several new crewed descents took place. In addition to the solo dive by James Cameron in 2012, privately funded expeditions between 2019 and 2020 carried multiple researchers to Challenger Deep using advanced submersibles. These vehicles employed titanium spheres and syntactic foam for buoyancy. Syntactic foam contains tiny, hollow spheres embedded in resin. It resists compression while remaining lighter than water. During these more recent descents, observers reported a gently sloping plane. The seafloor appeared pale under artificial lights. Tracks left by sea cucumbers crossed the sediment. Small crustaceans moved slowly across the surface. The environment did not show dramatic cliffs at the deepest point. Instead, it resembled a broad basin filled with fine material. Biological surveys of amphipods from the trench revealed something unexpected, but presented without alarm. Chemical analyses detected persistent organic pollutants, including compounds such as PCBs. These substances originated from industrial processes at the surface. They entered the ocean through rivers and atmospheric transport. Over decades, they became incorporated into marine food webs. Even in the deepest trench, trace amounts were measurable. The finding illustrates how interconnected Earth's systems are. Despite extreme pressure, many trench organisms belong to familiar groups. Amphipods are crustaceans. Sea cucumbers are echinoderms related to sea stars. Polychaete worms inhabit the sediment. Foraminifera, single-celled organisms with shells, are abundant. The difference lies not in entirely new categories of life, but in adaptation within known lineages. At depth, metabolism tends to be slow. Low temperatures reduce biochemical reaction rates. Limited food supply favors energy conservation. Many deep-sea animals grow slowly and live long lives compared to shallow water relatives. Reproductive strategies vary. Some produce fewer, larger offspring. Others release eggs into the water column. Precise life cycles are still being studied. Microbial communities within trench sediments are diverse. DNA sequencing reveals thousands of species in small samples. Some microbes use organic carbon from marine snow. Others rely on chemical reactions involving nitrogen, sulfur, or methane. Pressure influences enzyme structure. Laboratory studies show that certain trench bacteria grow best at high pressure, a condition known as piezophily. The trench also plays a role in carbon cycling. Organic matter that sinks to the bottom can become buried in sediment. Over long time scales, this burial removes carbon from short-term circulation. Subduction then carries some of this carbon deeper into the mantle. Volcanic processes may eventually return part of it to the atmosphere. The cycle spans millions of years. Seismic activity along the trench is measured carefully. Instruments placed on the sea floor record small tremors. Most are minor adjustments as plates shift. Occasionally, larger earthquakes occur in the broader region. These events are related to the same tectonic forces that created the trench. However, the deepest point itself is not constantly active. It is shaped by slow geological motion rather than continuous disruption. Water circulation near the trench bottom is gentle. Currents are weak. Fine sediment can remain undisturbed for long periods. When a submersible lands, its thrusters stir clouds of particles. These clouds settle gradually. After departure, stillness returns. Light does not penetrate to these depths. Illumination during exploration comes from artificial sources. High-intensity lamps reveal a limited area around the vehicle. Beyond that, darkness resumes. The absence of sunlight means there are no plants in the trench. All energy originates elsewhere. Marine snow drifts down at varying rates. Some particles sink quickly, such as fecal pellets from zooplankton. Others fall slowly, suspended by water movement. On the trench slopes, gravity can trigger small sediment slides. These turbidity currents carry material downward in pulses. When they reach the basin, they spread thin layers across the floor. Sound behaves differently in deep water. Pressure and temperature affect its speed. Marine mammals do not typically dive to trench depths, but distant noises from ships and storms can propagate through the ocean. The deep sea is quieter than coastal waters, yet not entirely silent. Human presence in the trench remains rare. Each descent requires months of planning. Weather conditions must be stable. Support ships position themselves precisely above the target site. Communication systems monitor the submersible's location. The process unfolds slowly. Scientific instruments lowered into the trench collect data over long durations. Landers, which are free-falling platforms, descend with weights and later release ballast to return. Cameras mounted on these landers capture images of animals attracted to bait. Pressure. Housings protect electronics. After retrieval, data are analyzed in laboratories on land. Over time, a clearer picture has emerged. The Mariana Trench is not empty. It is not chaotic. It is an extreme but stable habitat. Its biological communities are sparse compared to shallow reefs, yet they are persistent. Geochemists study pore water within sediments. They extract small samples from cores and measure dissolved chemicals. Gradients of oxygen and nutrients reveal how microbes process organic matter. In some areas, oxygen penetrates only a few centimeters into the mud. Below that, anaerobic processes dominate. The trench's slopes contain exposed rock in certain sections. Here, the subducting plate bends downward. Fault lines cut across the terrain. Fluids released from the descending slab alter the chemistry of surrounding rocks. These interactions contribute to the formation of serpentine minerals and other metamorphic products. Volcanic activity associated with the Mariana Arc occurs west of the trench. Underwater volcanoes rise toward the surface, forming island chains. Hydrothermal vents exist in this broader region, though not directly at Challenger Deep. These vents support ecosystems based on chemosynthesis. The trench and the volcanic arc are connected through plate tectonics, yet their biological communities differ. Research continues to refine bathymetric maps. In 2019, the 5 Deeps expedition conducted detailed surveys of Challenger Deep using advanced sonar and crewed descents. Measurements were cross-checked with satellite positioning and pressure sensors. Each dataset was compared carefully to reduce error. These efforts demonstrate that exploration of the trench is ongoing, though infrequent. The data accumulate gradually. No single expedition provides a complete account. Understanding grows through repetition and verification. Even as technology advances, limitations remain. Communication at such depth relies on acoustic signals. These signals travel slowly compared to radio waves. Messages between submersible and ship require seconds to transmit. Real-time control is limited. Pilots must act with foresight. The trench, in its depth and quiet, invites reflection on scale. The ocean covers most of Earth's surface. Its deepest point is far below the average continental elevation. Yet the trench occupies a small fraction of the sea floor. It is both immense and localized. Above, sunlight continues to warm surface waters. Storms move across the Pacific. Ships cross trade routes. None of this motion disturbs the basin at nearly 11,000 meters. Down there, time feels extended. Sediment settles grain by grain. Microbes divide slowly. Amphipods scavenge patiently. When instruments are retrieved and submersibles return to the surface, researchers examine their findings with measured care. Samples are cataloged. DNA sequences are compared. Chemical concentrations are recorded. Each number is placed within broader, scientific context. In this way, the Mariana Trench becomes less a distant abstraction and more a carefully documented environment. It is shaped by plate tectonics. It is sustained by global circulation. It is inhabited by organisms adapted to pressure and darkness. It is influenced, even faintly, by human activity. The deeper we consider it, the quieter it seems. Its processes unfold without urgency. Its depths remain cool and still. Knowledge accumulates in small increments, like sediment on the basin floor. Beyond the visible surface of sediment, deeper layers hold a record of slow change. Each centimeter of mud may represent hundreds or thousands of years. Tiny shells from plankton drifted down long ago. Mineral grains traveled from distant continents. Volcanic ash from eruptions in the Pacific settled softly through the water column. Over time, these materials formed quiet layers, one resting upon another. When scientists extract a sediment core from the trench, they do so with care. A long tube is lowered from a ship or submersible. It presses gently into the sea floor and captures a vertical column of mud. Once brought back to the surface, the core is kept cool. It is sliced into sections. Each layer is labeled and analyzed. Chemical signatures are measured. Microfossils are identified under microscopes. The chemistry of trench sediments reflects both local and global processes. Elements such as carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus move through biological cycles. Ratios between isotopes provide information about past productivity in surface waters. If more plankton once lived above, more organic material would have sunk downward. The sediment preserves this history in subtle shifts. Pressure influences not only animals and microbes, but also the physical properties of water and minerals. At nearly 11,000 meters, water compresses slightly. It becomes denser than at the surface. Minerals within the sediment are pressed together. Over geological time, deeper burial can transform soft mud into harder rock. Yet, at Challenger Deep, much of the upper sediment remains unconsolidated, still soft to the touch of a sampling device. Life in the trench is sparse when compared to coastal seas. There are no coral reefs. There are no schools of fish moving in bright patterns. Instead, activity is measured and quiet. A sea cucumber leaves a faint trail across the sediment. An amphipod pauses near a piece of organic debris. A small snailfish, adapted to great depth, may glide briefly through the water just above the bottom. Deep-sea snailfish from hadal zones, including parts of the Mariana Trench, have been studied with care. These fish lack swim bladders. Gas-filled organs would not function under such pressure. Their bodies are gelatinous, with reduced bone density. This structure allows flexibility. Enzymes within their cells contain chemical adaptations that maintain function when compressed. Laboratory experiments show that certain compounds, such as trimethylamine N-oxide, accumulate in their tissues. This molecule helps stabilize proteins under pressure. The distribution of animals within the trench is not uniform. The slopes can support slightly different communities than the deepest basin. Organic material may accumulate more heavily in certain depressions. Currents, though weak, can influence where food settles. Even small differences matter over long timescales. Above the trench, the water column contains its own layered ecosystems. While the deepest zone is called the hadal zone, waters between 6 and 11,000 meters are part of this same category. Above that lies the abyssal zone, then the bathyal zone, and higher still the mesopelagic and epipelagic zones. Each layer has distinct temperature, pressure, and light conditions. Organisms are distributed accordingly. The hadal zone is named after Hades, from Greek mythology, a term chosen to describe great depth rather than to suggest anything beyond the physical. Scientists use it in a precise way. It refers specifically to ocean depths greater than 6,000 meters, typically within trenches formed by subduction. The Mariana Trench contains one of the largest hadal habitats on Earth. Research into hadal ecosystems has grown gradually. Sampling is technically demanding. Pressure-resistant traps and baited cameras are lowered carefully. The data returned show that life is present, though in lower abundance than in shallower regions. Diversity is often lower as well, but certain groups are highly specialized. Amphipods in the trench sometimes grow larger than their shallow water relatives, a phenomenon observed in several deep-sea crustaceans. This pattern is sometimes called deep-sea gigantism. The reasons are not fully resolved. Hypotheses include slower metabolism, fewer predators, and physiological factors related to pressure. Observations are ongoing. The microbial communities in hadal sediments display high diversity despite limited food. Many species are piezophiles, meaning they thrive at high pressure. Laboratory cultivation of these microbes requires special pressure chambers. Without pressure, some lose viability. This illustrates how tightly adapted they are to their environment. Organic matter that reaches the trench may originate thousands of kilometers away. Surface currents carry plankton blooms across the Pacific. When these organisms die, fragments begin their descent. The journey downward can take days or weeks. By the time particles reach hadal depths, much has been consumed by mid-water organisms. What remains is sparse but continuous. Occasionally, episodic events deliver more material. Undersea landslides along the trench walls can transport sediment rapidly into the basin. Earthquakes may trigger such movements. These turbidity currents are not frequent, but over centuries they contribute to the layering of the floor. Temperature at Challenger Deep remains stable throughout the year. Seasonal changes at the surface do not penetrate so far. The deep ocean is buffered against short-term fluctuations. This stability shapes the biology of its inhabitants. Adaptation favors consistency rather than rapid response. Oxygen concentrations in hadal waters are generally sufficient for aerobic life. This is due to large-scale thermohaline circulation. Cold, oxygen-rich water sinks near polar regions and spreads into the deep ocean. Over long periods, it reaches even the deepest trenches. The renewal rate is slow, measured in centuries, yet it is steady. Scientific understanding of the trench continues to refine small details. Precise depth measurements are corrected for tidal variation and water density. Sediment grain size is classified under microscopes. Genetic sequences are compared to identify new species. Many organisms collected from hadal depths represent species previously unknown to science, though they belong to familiar families. The trench also serves as a natural boundary in biogeography. Some species are found only within specific trenches. Others appear in multiple hadal systems around the Pacific. Isolation by distance and depth may influence evolutionary pathways. Genetic studies help trace these relationships. Human exploration remains limited in frequency. Each expedition contributes incremental knowledge. There is no continuous human presence at the bottom. Instead, visits are brief. Instruments gather data autonomously for months at a time. Retrieval occurs when weather and logistics allow. In recent years, international collaboration has increased. Scientists from different nations share bathymetric maps and biological findings. Data are archived in global databases. This shared approach allows comparison between trenches in the Pacific and those in other oceans, such as the Tonga and Kermadec trenches. Despite its depth, the Mariana Trench is part of Earth's surface environment. It is not separate from planetary systems. Carbon cycles through it. Water circulates through it. Tectonic plates move beneath it. Human-generated materials in trace amounts have reached it. As research continues, the pace remains measured. There are no rapid transformations in this environment. Geological change is slow. Biological processes proceed at reduced rates. Even the descent of a submersible is unhurried, taking hours to reach the bottom. When lights are turned off at the end of a dive, darkness returns completely. There is no residual glow. The trench remains in its natural state. Pressure holds steady. Temperature remains low. sediment continues to settle. In considering the Mariana Trench, one begins to sense scale differently. Depth replaces height as the dimension of interest. Silence replaces sound. Motion becomes subtle. The environment does not call attention to itself. It exists quietly, shaped by forces that operate over immense spans of time. Knowledge of this place has grown through persistence rather than speed. Soundings taken with rope gave way to sonar. Steel spheres descended once, then decades later again. Robotic vehicles extended observation. Each step built upon the previous. The trench today is mapped more accurately than ever before. Its maximum depth is known within a few meters. Its sediment composition is documented. Its biological communities are described in scientific literature. Yet much remains to be studied, not because it is unknowable, but because it is vast and distant. At nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, Challenger Deep rests beneath layers of water that filter out light and sound. Above it, the Pacific stretches wide. Winds move across its surface. Clouds form and dissolve. None of this disturbs the quiet basin below. In that stillness, amphipods continue their slow movements. Microbes process organic molecules. Tectonic plates inch forward. The Mariana Trench remains as it has for millions of years, deep and composed, part of the larger rhythm of the planet. The further we follow these processes, the softer the narrative becomes. There is no need for urgency. The trench endures without haste. Its story unfolds in sediment layers, in chemical gradients, in patient observation. And so the image of the trench settles in the mind as a broad, dark basin. Cool water rests above it. Fine particles drift down. Life persists in small, steady forms. The deepest place in the ocean continues its quiet existence, far below the shifting light of the sea surface. The Mariana Trench can also be understood through the slow movement of Earth's interior. The Pacific Plate descends beneath the Mariana Plate at a rate of only a few centimeters per year. This motion is steady. It does not pause. Over millions of years, that small yearly distance becomes thousands of kilometers of subducted crust. As the Pacific Plate bends downward, it fractures. Water that once filled cracks in the oceanic crust is carried deep into the mantle. Under high pressure and temperature, some of this water is released. It rises into the overlying mantle wedge. There it lowers the melting point of rock. Magma forms. Over long spans of time, this magma feeds volcanoes in the Mariana Island Arc to the west of the trench. The trench and the island arc are parts of the same system. One marks descent, the other marks ascent. Between them lies a forearc region with its own geology. Submarine ridges and basins shape the sea floor in this zone. These features are mapped carefully through sonar surveys and submersible observation. The deepest part of the trench, Challenger Deep, lies in its southern section. North of it, depth decreases gradually. The trench curves in a long arc, following the boundary of plates. Its width varies, generally between 60 and 100 kilometers. Slopes descend steeply from the surrounding abyssal plains into the central trough. The rocks of the subducting plate are old. Much of the Pacific seafloor in this region formed during the Jurassic period, more than 150 million years ago. Over time, It cooled and became denser. This density contributes to its ability to sink beneath the lighter Mariana Plate. Earthquakes along the trench boundary are monitored through global seismic networks. Instruments record vibrations that travel through the planet. These measurements reveal the angle and depth of the subducting slab. Some earthquakes occur deep within the descending plate, hundreds of kilometers below the surface. Others occur closer to the trench axis. Most are small. A few are larger, though they remain part of the long-term tectonic adjustment. From a biological perspective, the trench floor is influenced by this geology in subtle ways. Chemical compounds released from the subducting slab may alter nearby sediments. Fluids moving through fractures can transport minerals. These changes affect microbial communities, which respond to available chemical energy sources. Researchers sometimes compare trench ecosystems to other extreme environments on Earth. Deep-sea hydrothermal vents rely on chemical energy from Earth's interior. Polar regions experience cold and seasonal darkness. High-altitude lakes endure low oxygen. Each environment shapes life in distinct ways. The Mariana Trench represents a combination of high pressure, low temperature, and absence of light. When scientists measure pressure tolerance in trench organisms, they often conduct laboratory experiments. Samples are placed in pressure chambers. Conditions are adjusted gradually. Observations focus on enzyme function and membrane stability. Results show that certain deep-sea species lose normal activity at surface pressure. Their physiology is tuned to compression. The absence of light eliminates photosynthesis in the trench. There are no primary producers in the traditional sense. Instead, energy arrives from above or from chemical processes within sediment. This dependence on external input limits overall biomass. As a result, population densities remain low. Snailfish observed at hadal depths are often translucent or pale. Pigmentation offers little advantage in darkness. Vision may be reduced. Other senses become more important. Lateral line systems detect vibration. Chemical receptors sense dissolved compounds in the water. Invertebrates dominate the sea floor. Sea cucumbers slowly ingest sediment, extracting organic matter. Polycate worms burrow beneath the surface. Crustaceans scavenge. Each organism contributes to bioturbation, the gentle mixing of sediment layers. This activity influences oxygen penetration and nutrient cycling. Over very long periods, tectonic forces may alter the trench's shape. Sediment may fill certain depressions. Slopes may collapse in minor adjustments. However, these changes are measured in geological time. For human observers, the trench appears stable. Technological improvements continue to refine observation. High-definition cameras provide clearer images than earlier systems. Pressure-resistant sampling devices allow retrieval of intact specimens. Genetic sequencing techniques identify species from small tissue fragments. Data storage systems archive large volumes of information for future study. Despite this progress, direct human presence at the bottom remains rare. Each descent is carefully planned. Life support systems must function reliably. Emergency procedures are rehearsed. The goal is steady observation rather than prolonged occupation. In addition to scientific exploration, the trench holds legal and environmental significance. Portions of it lie within the exclusive economic zone of the United States near Guam. Other sections are in international waters. Marine protected areas have been established in parts of the Mariana region to conserve biodiversity and geological features. Environmental monitoring includes measurement of microplastics and chemical residues. Sediment cores, analyzed in recent years, have revealed small fragments of plastic fibers. These materials likely traveled from distant sources through ocean currents. Their presence at depth reflects global distribution rather than local activity. Sound from human activities, such as shipping and sonar use, can propagate through the deep ocean. However, intensity decreases with distance. The trench's remote location limits direct disturbance. Its depth further isolates it from many surface influences. Oceanographic studies also examine temperature and salinity profiles above the trench. Instruments called CTDs measure conductivity, temperature, and depth. These parameters determine water density. Profiles show a thermocline in upper layers, where temperature drops rapidly with depth. Below a few thousand meters, temperature stabilizes near freezing. Salinity remains relatively consistent in deep waters, though small variations exist. Combined with temperature, salinity influences the movement of deep currents. These currents transport oxygen and nutrients across ocean basins. Over centuries, global climate variations can influence deep ocean properties. Changes in surface temperature affect the formation of deep water masses in polar regions. These effects eventually propagate to the hadal zone, though slowly. The trench records these changes subtly in sediment chemistry. Research vessels that visit the trench operate with patience. Transit across the Pacific may take weeks. Equipment is lowered carefully. Recovery depends on precise timing. Weather patterns are considered. Each expedition requires coordination among scientists, engineers, and crew. When sediment samples are opened in laboratories, their scent sometimes reflects chemical processes within. Hydrogen sulfide may be present in deeper layers. Microbial respiration shapes these chemical gradients. Measurements are taken promptly to preserve accuracy. The concept of depth in the trench often invites comparison to mountains on land. Yet depth and height are relative to sea level. The Earth's surface varies in many directions. The trench represents one extreme of this variation. Maps of the ocean floor now reveal details that were unknown a century ago. Satellite altimetry measures slight changes in sea surface height caused by gravity variations from underwater features. These data, combined with sonar surveys, produce increasingly accurate global bathymetric maps. The Mariana Trench appears as a narrow, elongated depression within this larger pattern. Still, even with modern technology, full coverage at the highest resolution is incomplete. The ocean floor remains less mapped in detail than the surfaces of some other planetary bodies. Efforts are underway to improve coverage systematically. In the quiet context of planetary history, the Mariana Trench is a temporary feature. Plate boundaries shift, continents move. Over tens of millions of years, new trenches form, while others disappear. The present configuration reflects current tectonic arrangements. For now, the trench continues its slow evolution. Subduction proceeds. Sediment accumulates. Microbes metabolize. Amphipods forage. The environment remains cold and dark. As attention lingers on this place, the sense of scale grows softer. Measurements become numbers without urgency. Depth becomes a dimension of calm rather than of spectacle. The trench does not demand notice. It persists quietly beneath the Pacific. Above it, daylight fades and returns each day. Storm systems cross the ocean. Tides rise and fall. These cycles pass unnoticed at nearly 11,000 meters. There, pressure is constant, temperature is steady, movement is minimal. The Mariana Trench, shaped by plate tectonics and sustained by distant sources of energy, remains one of the most remote habitats on Earth. Its story unfolds slowly. Knowledge accumulates gently. The basin rests in darkness, unchanged by passing hours. And so the account continues, step by step, following processes that require patience to understand. The deeper we consider them, the more measured they feel. The trench lies where it has long lain, beneath layers of water and time. When we look even more closely at the Mariana Trench, attention turns to scale at the microscopic level. A large part of life there cannot be seen without magnification. Within a single gram of sediment, millions of microbial cells may be present. They are small, often only a few micrometers in size. Yet their collective activity shapes the chemistry of the trench floor. These microorganisms participate in cycles of carbon and nitrogen. Organic matter that sinks from the surface is broken down step by step. Larger molecules are divided into smaller ones. Oxygen is consumed in the upper sediment layers. Deeper down, where oxygen no longer penetrates, other processes take over. Nitrate, sulfate, and carbon dioxide may serve as electron acceptors in microbial metabolism. These reactions proceed slowly, guided by low temperatures and limited energy supply. The depth of oxygen penetration into trench sediment is typically shallow. In some cores, oxygen disappears within the first few centimeters. Below that boundary, chemical gradients change. Iron and manganese compounds may be reduced. Methane can form in deeper, older layers. Each zone is defined by subtle differences in chemistry. Scientists measure these gradients carefully. Tiny probes are inserted into fresh sediment cores. Concentrations are recorded at millimeter intervals. Data points are plotted. The result is a profile that reflects biological and chemical balance over time. The hadal environment also influences the structure of organic molecules. High pressure affects protein folding. Certain adaptations help maintain stability. Trimethylamine N-oxide, often abbreviated as TMAO, accumulates in some deep-sea animals. Its concentration tends to increase with depth. Laboratory studies confirm that TMAO can counteract pressure-induced changes in protein structure. Cell membranes in trench organisms contain specific lipid compositions. These lipids remain flexible despite compression. Fluidity is important for cellular function. Without it, transport processes would slow further. Even at these depths, evolution continues. Genetic variation arises through mutation. Selection acts slowly but steadily. Over generations, traits suited to high pressure and low temperature persist. Isolation within trenches may contribute to the formation of distinct species. Comparisons between trenches reveal both similarities and differences. The Tonga Trench and the Kermadec Trench also contain hadal ecosystems. Some amphipod species are shared across these systems. Others appear unique to a single trench. Genetic studies help clarify these patterns. In addition to living organisms, the trench contains physical traces of distant environments. Wind-blown dust from continents can travel across oceans before settling. Volcanic ash from eruptions thousands of kilometers away may descend slowly through the water column. Each particle carries information about its origin. The accumulation rate of sediment at Challenger Deep is relatively slow. Estimates vary, but in many areas it is measured in millimeters per 1,000 years. This gradual pace means that older layers remain near the surface compared to more rapidly accumulating environments. The record is long but thin. Water mass properties above the trench are shaped by global circulation. Deep water in the Pacific originates primarily from the Southern Ocean. It sinks near Antarctica and flows northward along the ocean floor. Over centuries, it spreads into deep basins and trenches. By the time it reaches the Mariana region, it has aged considerably in oceanographic terms. Aging of deep water can be estimated through radiocarbon dating of dissolved inorganic carbon. These measurements indicate that some deep Pacific waters are more than 1,000 years old. This slow circulation reinforces the stability of the hadal environment. Occasionally, researchers deploy time-lapse cameras on landers placed at the trench floor. These systems record images at intervals over days or weeks. The footage shows gradual movement. Amphipods approach bait. Sea cucumbers traverse the sediment. After feeding, organisms disperse. Activity remains measured and sparse. The trench also provides insight into material strength and engineering limits. Materials tested under simulated hadal pressure inform submarine design and scientific instrumentation. Pressure vessels must resist collapse. Seals must prevent leakage. Electronics require protection from both compression and cold. In educational contexts, the Mariana Trench often serves as a reference point for understanding ocean depth. Textbooks describe its location, its formation, and its measured depth. Students compare it to mountain heights. This comparison helps visualize vertical scale on Earth. Yet beyond numbers, the trench represents continuity. It has existed in some form for tens of millions of years. Its exact depth and shape have shifted gradually. Subduction has not ceased. Sediment has not stopped falling. Life has not withdrawn. The surrounding Pacific Basin contains abyssal plains at depths of 4,000 to 6,000 meters. These plains are broad and relatively flat. The transition from abyssal plain to trench slope marks a change in gradient. As the sea floor bends downward, sediment transport patterns adjust. Gravity-driven flows along the slopes contribute to trench infill. When sediment accumulates on steep surfaces, it may become unstable. A minor disturbance can initiate downslope movement. These events are not constant, but over long periods they help shape the trench profile. In some trench systems, hydrothermal activity is present along forearc regions. In the Mariana system, hydrothermal vents have been identified in the back arc basin to the west. These vent communities are distinct from hadal trench floor communities. They rely on chemosynthetic bacteria that use chemical energy from vent fluids. The trench basin itself, however, does not host the same type of vent fields. The chemical environment of Challenger Deep is largely influenced by organic matter input and sediment diagenesis rather than by active venting. This distinction helps explain differences in biological composition. Scientific expeditions often include multidisciplinary teams. Geologists analyze rock structure. Biologists catalog species. Chemists measure dissolved compounds. Physical oceanographers examine water properties. Data are integrated after voyages conclude. The logistical effort required to reach the trench fosters careful planning. Equipment must function reliably under high pressure. Redundancy is built into systems. Each component is inspected repeatedly before deployment. As exploration continues, incremental refinements are made. Depth. Measurements are recalibrated. Species lists expand. Chemical analyses become more precise. No single discovery changes the overall character of the trench. Instead, understanding deepens gradually. In the broader context of planetary science, the Mariana Trench offers a reference for extreme marine environments. When researchers consider subsurface oceans on icy moons, such as Europa or Enceladus, they examine how life on Earth tolerates pressure and darkness. The trench provides a real example of such tolerance. Back on Earth, the trench remains distant from most human experience. Few ships pass directly above Challenger Deep. Even fewer instruments reach its floor. Its isolation contributes to its steady state. In the silence of its depths, processes unfold without interruption. Microbial respiration continues. Sediment compacts slightly under its own weight. Water flows slowly through deep currents. If one imagines descending again, the journey would take hours. Light would fade gradually. Temperature would decline. Pressure would rise steadily. At the bottom, the scene would appear familiar to previous observers. A pale plain of mud, sparse life, still water. Then ascent would begin. Ballast would be released. The vehicle would rise slowly through darkness. Hours later, sunlight would return at the surface. The trench would remain below, unchanged. Over decades, more such journeys may occur. Each will add detail. Each will confirm patterns already observed. The overall impression will remain one of quiet persistence. The Mariana Trench does not shift rapidly. It does not transform from day to day. Its story is told through slow deposition, steady tectonic motion, and careful measurement. As this account continues, its pace softens further. The processes described require patience to appreciate. There is no rush in sediment settling, no urgency in microbial metabolism, no haste in plate movement. At nearly 11,000 meters below sea level, the trench endures. Water rests above it. Darkness surrounds it. Life adapts within it. The narrative of the Mariana Trench is therefore one of continuity. Depth defines it. Pressure shapes it. Time sustains it. And in that depth, far beneath surface light, the basin remains quiet, holding its layers of sediment and its sparse communities, while the planet turns slowly overhead. As scientific work continues, the Mariana Trench becomes less a distant point on a map and more a carefully measured environment. Coordinates are fixed with satellite navigation. Depth is calculated with corrected pressure readings. Each variable is recorded with attention to detail. Pressure sensors used in modern expeditions are calibrated against known standards. Small differences in temperature and salinity influence density and therefore depth calculations. These factors are accounted for step by step. The final numbers are precise within narrow margins. The deepest confirmed measurements at Challenger Deep are close to 10,925 meters, depending on tidal correction and method. Variations of a few meters are natural. The seafloor is not perfectly level. Small undulations exist. Acoustic communication at these depths is deliberate. Sound pulses travel through water at about 1,500 meters per second, influenced slightly by temperature and pressure. Messages between submersible and support ship are brief and measured. There is no rapid exchange. Navigation near the trench floor relies on sonar mapping and inertial systems. Visual reference is limited to the range of artificial lights. Pilots move slowly to avoid disturbing sediment. Thrusters are used with restraint. Sampling devices are lowered gently. Manipulator arms collect small amounts of sediment or biological material. Containers are sealed carefully. Pressure-retaining systems are sometimes used to keep organisms at depth-equivalent pressure during ascent. This helps preserve their structure for study. Back in laboratories, specimens are examined under controlled conditions. Microscopes reveal fine details of anatomy. Genetic sequencing identifies relationships among species. Chemical assays measure trace elements. Over years of study, patterns have emerged. Amphipods are among the most commonly observed mobile animals in hadal trenches. Certain genera appear repeatedly in samples. Snailfish have been recorded at depths exceeding 8,000 meters and occasionally near 8,200 to 8,400 meters. Evidence suggests that bony fish may have physiological limits below certain pressures, which could explain why fish are less common at the absolute deepest points. Sea cucumbers remain steady presences on the sediment surface. Their feeding activity contributes to nutrient recycling. Burrowing worms aerate upper sediment layers. Microbial films coat particles invisibly. Energy flow through this system is modest. Organic input from above is the primary source. No sunlight enters. No plants grow. Chemosynthetic activity is limited compared to hydrothermal vent systems. The hadal zone, including the Mariana Trench, represents less than 1% of the global seafloor area. Yet its depth makes it significant in understanding extremes. It defines the lower boundary of Earth's ocean. In the broader planetary context, Earth's average ocean depth is about 3,700 meters. Challenger Deep extends nearly 3 times that average downward. Still, relative to Earth's radius, even 11 kilometers is a thin outer layer. The crust itself averages about 35 kilometers thick under continents and less under oceans. The trench cuts into this crust, but does not approach the mantle directly at the surface. Geophysical studies using seismic waves show the descending Pacific Plate extending deep beneath the Mariana region. These images are created by analyzing how earthquake waves travel through different materials. Slower or faster travel times reveal temperature and composition variations. Such studies require global collaboration. Seismic stations around the world contribute data. The trench becomes part of a larger model of Earth's internal structure. Oceanographers also examine long-term changes in deep water temperature. Measurements over decades show that deep ocean temperatures can shift slightly in response to global climate trends. These changes are subtle, often measured in hundredths of a degree Celsius. Yet, over large volumes of water, even small changes are significant. In the trench, temperature remains near freezing, typically between 1 and 2 degrees Celsius. Seasonal cycles do not reach this depth. Variations occur on longer timescales. Salinity remains stable as well. Combined with pressure, it defines the physical properties of hadal water masses. Density gradients above the trench limit vertical mixing. This contributes to the steady nature of the environment. Human exploration technology continues to advance slowly. Materials improve. Data storage expands. But the descent time remains hours. The ascent time remains hours. There is no way to shorten the vertical distance without altering physics. The rarity of direct visits adds to the measured character of research. Between major expeditions, years may pass. Instruments deployed on the sea floor operate quietly, recording pressure, temperature, or seismic signals. They wait for retrieval. Meanwhile, the trench itself remains unchanged by observation. It does not respond to being measured. It does not accelerate or shift in reaction to human presence. If sediment cores are compared from different years, slight differences may appear in uppermost layers. New particles settle. Microbial communities adjust to fresh input. The changes are gradual. The idea of depth often invites imagination. Yet, in scientific terms, it is simply a vertical coordinate, a value recorded in meters, a parameter to be measured and compared. Within that coordinate, life persists in minimal but steady form. Each organism operates within limits defined by pressure and food availability. Reproduction occurs. Death occurs. Organic matter is recycled. The trench floor is not silent in an absolute sense. Small organisms move. Water molecules shift. Chemical reactions proceed. But compared to surface environments, activity is subdued. In educational discussions, the Mariana Trench is sometimes described as the last frontier on Earth. In practical terms, it is one of several extreme environments that require specialized tools. Its remoteness is logistical rather than mystical. As mapping projects continue, more of the global seafloor is being charted in higher resolution. International efforts aim to map the entire ocean floor at improved detail within coming decades. The trench will be part of that effort, though its central basin is already well surveyed relative to many other regions. Over geological time, the Pacific Plate will continue to subduct. The trench may deepen slightly or fill slightly, depending on balance, between tectonic forces and sediment supply. These processes are slow beyond everyday perception. In the present moment, Challenger Deep rests beneath nearly 11 kilometers of water. Pressure holds constant. Temperature remains low. Darkness is complete. If one were to imagine the trench now, without instruments or lights, it would appear as a broad, dim expanse of sediment. No surface waves reach it. No sunlight touches it. Life continues quietly. The account of the Mariana Trench has moved from discovery to measurement, from assumption to observation. Early rope soundings suggested great depth. Sonar confirmed it. Submersibles verified it. Robotic systems refined it. Each step added clarity without altering the trench itself. It remains a feature of plate tectonics and ocean circulation. It remains a habitat shaped by scarcity and pressure. As this description slows further, the emphasis shifts from detail to continuity. The processes described do not rush. They do not pause. They proceed at steady rates. Above, the Pacific Ocean reflects the sky. Below, the trench holds its position. Water settles into its deepest contour. Sediment layers thicken by fractions of millimeters. Microbes persist. The Mariana Trench continues as it has for millions of years, not as an event, but as a place. A place defined by depth. A place sustained by time. And in that depth, beneath the weight of the ocean, the basin remains still. In the end, the Mariana Trench can be understood as part of a larger whole. It is not separate from the rest of the planet. It is a continuation of the ocean's surface, extended downward to its natural limit. The water above it connects to distant seas. Currents that begin near Antarctica travel slowly through the deep Pacific and pass above the trench. The oxygen carried in that water sustains life at the bottom. The organic particles that fall through the water column begin their journey in sunlit layers far above. The Pacific Plate continues to descend beneath the Mariana Plate. The motion is small each year, only a few centimeters. Yet over millions of years, that motion creates trenches, island arcs, and mountain chains. The trench is one visible expression of this quiet force. Sediment continues to settle into Challenger Deep. Each grain arrives without sound. Clay minerals, microscopic shells, and fragments of distant lands come to rest. The uppermost layer is soft. Beneath it, older layers compress gently under their own weight. Within those layers, microbes move and divide. Chemical reactions proceed at measured rates. Oxygen is consumed near the surface of the sediment. Deeper down, other pathways take over. These processes are slow, steady, and continuous. On the seafloor, amphipods search for fragments of organic matter. Sea cucumbers leave faint tracks across the mud. A snailfish may pass through the water just above the bottom, its body adapted to pressure and cold. None of these movements disturb the broader stillness. Pressure remains constant. At nearly 11,000 meters, it exceeds 1,000 times the pressure at sea level. Temperature stays near freezing. Light does not reach this depth. Darkness is complete, except when a research vehicle brings its own illumination. Human visits have been rare. A few submersibles have reached the deepest point. Robotic landers have collected samples. Sonar systems have mapped the contours with increasing precision. These efforts have clarified details, but have not changed the character of the place. The deepest confirmed measurements of Challenger Deep are close to 10,925 meters, with small variations depending on method and correction. The number is recorded carefully. It represents a physical boundary, the lowest measured point of Earth's ocean floor. Above that boundary, the ocean extends upward in layers. The abyssal plains surround the trench at shallower depths. Beyond them lie continental margins, then land. The trench is part of this continuous surface, folded and bent by tectonic forces. Over geological time, plate boundaries shift, new trenches form, others close. The Mariana Trench itself will not remain unchanged forever. Yet on the scale of human history, it is stable. The study of this place has provided insight into the limits of life. It has shown that organisms can adapt to extreme pressure and persistent darkness. It has revealed how global systems connect surface processes to the deepest ocean. At the same time, the trench does not present itself as extraordinary in its daily state. It does not surge or shimmer, it rests. The water above it moves slowly. The sediment beneath it compacts gradually. Tectonic plates continue their measured descent. If one imagines the trench at this moment, there is little motion to observe. Fine particles drift down through the water column. They settle softly onto the basin floor. No sound carries from the surface to disturb it. No sunlight penetrates. The environment remains constant. The Mariana Trench is therefore not only a measure of depth, but a reminder of scale and time. It shows how small yearly movements accumulate into vast geological structures. It shows how life persists in conditions far removed from warmth and light. And yet, in its present state, it is simply a deep basin beneath the Pacific Ocean. Water rests above it. Sediment lines its floor. Life continues quietly within it. There is no need for emphasis. The trench remains where it has long been, deep beneath the surface, calm, still, and patient beneath the turning of the earth.